Hey guys, this is PODFIC, and today we're going to be reading See You Next Time by My Pride. The summary is, Idiot, shouldn't you be in class or something? I wanted to make sure you're okay first, he admitted, running a hand up to Damian's. You had me worried, he whispered, and this time it was Damian who swallowed. Wait, what? What was that warm sensation he was beginning to feel in his chest? How did you know I was there? How did you find me? Damian asked with his usual composure, not wanting to give John the impression that he had misunderstood everything. Or at least, whatever John's look meant at that moment. Your heartbeat, John murmured, and Damian blinked. What? I heard your heartbeat. John stepped closer, their fingers almost touching. It was so close, it was beating so fast, I was afraid that... How long? What? How long have you been listening to my heartbeat? John paused, but didn't back down. A long time, D. Alright, without further ado, let's hop right in. Damian jerked awake and ran the back of his hand over his forehead to swipe away the sweat, looking around dazedly. He had no idea where he was. He didn't recognize the outline of any furniture, or the texture of the mattress he was lying on. These four walls seemed suffocating, and he had only vague memories of the night he had spent, too confused by the last few hours. He remembered going out on patrol with Red Robin, knocking off a couple of petty criminals, and foiling a drug deal on the plaza's secondary terrace. But then, everything had become strangely blurred. Maybe they had split up, each patrolling a different section? Yes, that was probably what happened. It would not be the first time, nor the last, but that still did not explain what he was doing there, wherever he was. Hey Dee, good to see you awake. Damian didn't mean to, but he jumped at the sound of the voice and instinctively stiffened his shoulders, fumbling under his pillow for a knife he couldn't find. Oh, right. It wasn't his bed. When he focused on the silhouette peering at him through the door, however, Damian relaxed at least partially, even if he blinked more confusedly than before. Jay? He asked spontaneously, massaging his head just above his left ear. Where am I? In my room at the campus dorm. John must have read something in Damian's expression, because he quickly locked the door behind him and raised his hand in surrender. Hey, take it easy. You were in civilian clothes when I found you a block away. I thought you'd be safer in my room. Damian looked at him stunned. In the civilian clothes? What did that mean? He had been on patrol, how the hell did I end up here? I don't know the details, John said, genuinely confused almost as much as he was. All I know is that you looked high and I smelled drugs on you. John's tone sounded terribly concerned. And if someone had drugged him, he was lucky to have been the one to find it. Weren't you supposed to be on patrol with Tem? You told me it's your turn and his going patrol together, he added as he took the place beside him on the mattress, and Damian frowned. Well, one of those details he remembered matched what John knew. He also knew now why he remembered nothing after the separation from Drake. But that still did not explain why John had found him in civilian clothes not far from the campus he had attended. I don't remember anything. Damian rubbed his temples and blinked. I have a terrible headache. Wait, there should be some aspirin around here. John got up and rummaged through the desk drawers, muttering to himself as he pulled out everything but what he needed. There were books, a box of condoms, and a couple of notebooks with pens in them, and Damian watched John's move with minute attention, supporting his head and running his fingers through his hair. He had never been in John's room in the campus, had seen every possible and imaginable aspect of his friend, but never the student side of him, and it was bizarre to imagine John in the company of other guys, who had no idea who he really was and invited him to confraternity parties and all that crap. In fact, he couldn't even imagine John flirting with anyone, but Damian preferred not to touch that subject, or even let it slip into his brain by accident. He had enough headaches without adding John's love or sex life to them. Found, finally. John said it in such a low voice that Damian could barely hear him, lifting one of the eyelids he had unconsciously closed to look at John, now across the room. When had he gone into the closet? Here's some water. John approached and handed him a glass and aspirin, which Damian swallowed in one gulp before massaging his temples again. Thanks, he mumbled as he reached over to the bedside table to put the glass down, feeling John's weight on the mattress again. I feel like I've been beaten all night. I wouldn't have ruled it out, knowing you, John teased, and Damian punched him in the shoulder, ignoring the groan he let out. He knew he was faking it anyway, but he appreciated him not using his invulnerability on him. Idiot. Shouldn't you be in class or something? John was silent for endless moments. Damian even saw his Adam's apple rise and fall imperceptibly as he swallowed. Then John turned to him, watching him very closely. I wanted to make sure you're okay first, he admitted, running a hand through Damian's hair. You had me worried. He whispered, and this time it was Damian who swallowed. Wait, what? What was that warm sensation he was beginning to feel in his chest? How did you know I was there? How did you find me? Damian asked with his usual composure, not wanting to give John the impression he had misunderstood everything, or at least whatever John's look meant at that moment. Your heartbeat, John murmured, and Damian blinked. What? I heard your heartbeat. John stepped closer, their fingers almost touching. It was so close, it was beating so fast, I was afraid that... How long? Damian interrupted, and John frowned. What? It was John's turn to ask when he saw Damian coming closer. How long have you been listening to my heartbeat? John paused, but didn't back down. A long time, Dee, he whispered, leaning all the way into Damian's face, who swallowed and raised his head automatically. His heart was beating wildly in his chest. John's scent penetrated his nostrils and intoxicated his senses. His lips seemed so inviting and soft and moist and shiny, as if he always had cocoa butter on them to keep them from cracking. John's face came closer, closer, and closer. The lips were one step away from brushing against each other and... Hey, JK, I hope your bony ass is ready, 'cause I'm not going to... Whoa! The door jerked open and the guy who had just walked in stopped at the side of Damian and John's bed. His eyes gliding over both of them for endless moments. Reflexively, John gasped. Damian almost threatened to headbutt him, and they both turned back to the wide-eyed heckler. But he didn't seem the least bit upset. On the contrary, he just shrugged as if nothing was wrong, before taking a step back. If you had company, you could have put a sock out here. Or told me, man. Bolting just as John threw a shoe and crashed into the newly closed door. Okay, I'm done with Kyle, John murmured, his cheeks flushed and freckles fading a bit through the blush, and he looked at Damian, who had tried to compose himself with a flick of his cough. Still, they looked into each other's eyes and brushed their fingers together again. Maybe I should. Maybe we... J-I-D. Damian's phone suddenly vibrated, and the moment broke again, causing both of them to curse and let go of the grip between their fingers. Was the universe angry with them, or what? John was beginning to think it was a stalker or something. Damn it. But Damian's strange expression before he blinked worried him even more. Oh, it's Drake. Tem? He wants to know how the operation went. I don't... Damian interrupted, suddenly widening his eyes and cursing himself for being caught off guard like an idiot. Shit, that's what happened. What are you talking about? Damian rubbed his nose and shook his head. I was on a case, he began, taking a long breath. A little operation, nothing serious. A guy who was trying to make some easy money selling to students on campus. I caught him, I'm sure. But I must have inhaled something when we fought, and here I am, he implied, shrugging as if it didn't bother him, but John frowned. If I had known, I could. You were there when I needed you, Jay, so don't make that face. Damian tapped him on the nose and slid off the covers to grab the pants he'd seen folded on the nightstand. I'd better go before Drake has a stroke, he said, giving him a look. And you better get going, too. Yeah, that's... I should, yeah, John stammered as he massaged his neck, his eyes following Damian as he headed for the window instead of the door. He opened it as if it was nothing, knowing that it was on the windowsill before turning back to him. And John was sure. He had never seen that expression on his face before. Thank you, Jay. For what? For taking care of me. Damian paused for a moment, then his lips curled into an amused smirk. Maybe next time we continue where we left off. John blinked for what seemed like an eternity, catching Damian's words too late as he watched him walk away. Wait, Dee! He exclaimed as he threw himself towards the window, seeing Damian perched on the branch of a tree, their eyes crossed. Damian winked at him and stood up, blowing a kiss at John before disappearing as if he had never been there, leaving John leaning against the windowsill like an idiot. John brushed 2 fingers over his lips and smiled at the thought of what Damian had said. Next time, huh? He was looking forward to it. Alright guys, and that is the end of See You Next Time by My Pride. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you next chapter.